All right, we're live. I'm back. I was gonna say friend of the program. I could say good friend of the program, maybe best friend of the program. Gabe Hers, of course, a contributor to Mets Rise, the popular Mets blog. What's up, Gabe? How's everything, man?
Everything's going well, Bryce. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, so this is actually the first live I've done in a while, and apologies for the lack of content. I have construction going on upstairs, down the hall, further down the hall. I have been woken up day after day, so apologies with that. I know no one cares, but just a little explanation as to why I haven't done anything. But I thought I'd return with Gabe, and we got to talk some Mets. I haven't done that in a while. Gabe is, I guess you could say, a bi-weekly guest at this point. I feel like you came on 2 weeks or maybe 3 weeks ago, but I feel like that's kind of where we're at right now, right?
Yeah, I was on right before the deadline, or right after the deadline. So, pretty much bi-week. We'll call it bi-weekly.
Yeah, why not? Why not? So I want to get to a few of those deadline acquisitions, but I think we have to start here in what has been the biggest news in, I wouldn't say a while, but in the last couple of weeks, and that's, of course, Francisco Alvarez. It feels like for the millionth time with another hand injury. This one is an issue with his thumb. I mean, like, at this point, dude, I can't even fathom what's going on here with Alvarez. What are your thoughts on yet another injury?
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, this is last year. It was the left thumb. I think he had two distinct. He hurt it in Los Angeles, and I think it flared up again at the end of the year. He was like hit while he was catching. This time around, it's the right thumb, and I was watching that game. It was the Little League World Series Classic, whatever they actually call it, and yeah, you knew immediately, right? The concern was that it was the old hand, but seems like the new hand is the same problem. He needs surgery, that's a given, but the Mets are going to see if he can at least play through it. So the plan right now is he's on the shelf, and they're going to reevaluate in 10 to 14 days. But yeah, it's obviously a huge blow since coming back from AAA Syracuse. Was running like a 1024 OPS. He was hitting the ball with power to the opposite field, with power to the pull side. He looked great. And a healthy Alvarez playing to his potential, keep in mind he's still only 23 years old, former number one prospect in baseball. You were starting to catch a glimpse of like him putting everything together. So it's a shame that it happened, and hopefully he can come back in a couple of weeks. But I'm not really counting on him being back for the 2025 season.
Yeah, it seems like wishful thinking. They say he can come back, but realistically, if he gets surgery, how is he going to play the field? How is he going to play catcher? I don't foresee a circumstance in which they bring him back just to hit. I think that makes it extremely tough when it comes to the Mets lineups. You've seen this now with Aaron Judge's injury. Some guys have to play. Maybe Alvarez is good enough to be the DH, but I feel like that could create a lot of issues come October, no?
Well, I think the plan is that if you would come back in 10 to 14
he would be
days,
DH.
He wouldn't get the surgery until the off season.
I see.
This would be something that they try to kick down the road. Now the concern is if he's got an injury to his right thumb, that's his throwing hand. I don't know if teams look to exploit that. I mean, that's the type of stuff that in the postseason, especially if you match up against a very opportunistic team like Milwaukee, those are the sort of areas where you could become extremely liable. Luis Torrens, who's now the de facto starting catcher, has been extremely impressive defensively behind the plate. He's ranks in the top few catchers in the league in caught stealing percentage and pop time percentage. And then the now backup Hayden Singer similarly ranks very high, although he hasn't shown an ability to hit much in the upper minors or the major league level, the small spurt that we saw him. So it's definitely a significant downgrade offensively, and for a Mets team that has been inconsistent offensively pretty much all season, but finally looking like they're hitting their groove, it's certainly a tough blow.
Yeah, I mean, for my own sake, watching from afar, obviously don't follow the team as closely as you do. It feels like every time Alvarez comes back from one of these injuries, it takes him a long time to get readjusted to MLB pitching. And then when something like this happens, where Alvarez got his average up to 265. That's the best it's been in a very long time. And then all of a sudden, this injury happens. That's obviously a tough blow for this Mets team. I think with how well he's hitting, though, Gabe, you could justify DHing him. Like, what other options do you have that you'd rather put in that DH position besides Alvarez? If, as you said, his OPS since he's returned has been that good. I just like, if you're David Stearns, if you're Mendoza, do you give him the surgery right now and let him, rehab as he should be rehabbing so he can get back? And listen, this isn't obviously like a torn ACL, like that. This isn't an issue that should keep him out for months, but maybe he re-aggravates it. Maybe, he's sliding again and screws up, like, God forbid that happens. If you were in charge of the Mets, what would you do in this situation? And what would you like to see done by the Mets organization?
I think they got to just wait and see what it looks like at the end of the minimum time on the injured list. I have my skepticism that he'll be able to hit as well as been hitting if he has a thumb that needs to be surgically repaired. It's still a part of gripping the bat and everything like that. And then comes down to roster construction. If you want to keep Alvarez on the roster strictly to hit, then you're going to need to carry 3 catchers. Tyrone Taylor has not played pretty much at all since Cedric Mullins was acquired. So he's possibly someone who's expendable, but then you lose a little bit of speed off the bench. They're likely going to want to call Acuna up when September 1st rolls around, when you have the extra roster spot, to have that speed and versatility on the bench. But it's tough. The Mets, similar to the Yankees, kind of have a log jam in terms of roster construction. They've got Mark Vientos it's a very small sample, but he's homered in back-to-back games. He's alternated between playing very sporadically and playing almost every day. And now it looks like the Mets are inclined to ride with the hot hand. Starling Marte has actually put together a very solid season, OPS in the 120s, and it's hitting like 270, 280. But he now hasn't played in 5 games because they need to get Vientos in the lineup. So if you're going to have Alvarez DH, you're going to lose some versatility off the bench. And then there's going to be a further logjam for playing time with, Marte and Vientos kind of spectating. And then it also has ripple effects down on Ronnie Mauricio and Brett Beatty because Jeff McNeil can't DH on the occasion as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this becomes difficult. It becomes a chess match, especially if they want him on the roster in the playoffs. So obviously we'll keep an eye on what's going on with Alvarez. So I want to – this is someone that I'm very interested in watching going forward. I did watch his first start in MLB, and that's Nolan McLain. I think I've listened to what Evan Roberts has had to say about him, and it seems like the average Mets fan is very excited for what he can bring. 5 1/3 innings the other day makes it, and I was watching this live when he made that behind the back catch early on in the game, bases loaded, 1 out. They turned the double play. I looked at my roommate, who's a massive Mets fan. I said, "That's where the season turns around." That play is, and they've won 3 games since. What did you see from Nolan McLain in that start in which he didn't allow an earned run and had 8 strikeouts?
Yeah, I was very impressed, and it, for a number of reasons, was at least felt massive for the Mets season. Number one, the whole fan base has kind of been seeing night in and night out the stats that, not night in, but every 5th day, the numbers that he was putting up first starting the year in Double-A Binghamton and then Triple-A Syracuse, while the Mets pitching staff had really been struggling for the better half of 2 months. And then again, coming off of losing, 13 or 15 games up to that point, it was essential for McLain to come up, not only, pitch well, but start to get the vibes turned around a little bit. And I was very happy watching that performance. I mean, this is a guy that looks like he's arguably the Mets' second best starting pitcher in the rotation right now. David Peterson I'll keep David Peterson at number 1 for now, and 8 innings, 10 strikeouts last night. Once again, very much needed. But yeah, McLain, the sweeper is like his number 1 pitch. He throws at the most. And he also has a separately shaped curveball. And the spin, for everyone who's into that, the spin that he gets on the breaking stuff, I think was averaging like 3,300 RPMs, which for reference, Charlie Morton threw like the spinniest curveball, or averages the spinniest curveball in the majors this year. and it was a full like 150 revolutions. McLean's curveball was a full 150 revolutions faster than Morton. So it's a significant pitch. It's a very plus pitch right now. Already as it stands, he's thrown 5 1/3 innings. He has, fastball sinker that can get up to like 96. I thought that even though he had 4 walks, I thought that he was attacking the zone. I thought he wasn't afraid to trust his stuff. 8 strikeouts, very impressive. And this was also, a surging Mariners team at the time, a good Mariners team that's in position to make the playoffs. Obviously, a lot of big names, especially adding Suarez and Naylor into that lineup. The right-handed hitters were 0 for 8 against him with 4 strikeouts. The one knock on McLean in the minors that he struggled with is the ability to get lefties out, and that's where all the damage was done against him. Not a lot of damage, but 2 hits, 4 walks from the left side. Right-handed, 0 for 8, 4 Ks. So this is a guy that I'm very happy to have up with the major leagues. I expect him to continue taking the ball for the Mets. He needs to just stay under 50 innings pitched for the rest of the season to maintain his rookie eligibility for next year, which I'm sure Stearns will try to, thread the needle there so we can have him aboard for next year. But overall, very encouraging stuff. And if the Mets want to get back well positioned in the playoffs and make a playoff run, he's going to be an essential piece.
I'm interested in one of the things you just said when talking about McLean. You just said he's pitched once in Major League Baseball. 5.1 innings. And you're already putting him ahead of Kodai Senga as the number 2 Mets starter? We got to address that. What makes you say that?
That's probably
also, I do understand that Senga has allowed 14 earned runs in his last 5. I understand that. But I feel like at some point he's going to return to form. He's been, ERA-wise, the best Mets pitcher. I think arguably David Peterson's the better pitcher, sustained throughout the entire year. But that is a pretty big statement right there from you.
Yeah, it's a bit outlandish, and I think kind of the way that I see it in my head, right? Senga was fantastic the first half of the season before his initial injury. He was fantastic in the 5 1/3 he threw in the regular season last year, and he was great the full year before. But it seems like Senga has at least shown quite a bit of volatility, and especially in the aftermath of the injuries, he's been very shaky. Propensity to, kind of give up the home run ball. He's left some pitches out over the middle of the plate on numerous occasions. Is a good bet to walk 2-3 guys a night. But look, Senga, right? His ghost fork is one of the best secondary pitches in baseball, and when he has everything in his repertoire working, he's shown flashes of being an ace. But I just think that if you told me right now I had to pick a pitcher who's going to deliver more consistent, more who I feel better with the ball in their hands, at least at this moment in time, despite the small sample.
You can't say that. He's pitched one time. You cannot say that. Come on. This is unreal.
Look, the last time the Mets had a crop of young talent that's projected to be as good as this crop of talent was in 2015. And I remember watching those games in 2015 when Noah Syndergaard came up, when Steven Matz came up later in the year. You can see these guys pitch, and you can see if they have it or not. I mean, McLean came into a high pressure environment. Everyone they needed a win, and he delivered. So look, if Senga can pitch up to his potential, McLean can keep pitching like he looked. Peterson can pitch up to his potential. The team should be in good shape, but that just hasn't happened. And Senga has a good get right spot tonight against Washington. I'm curious to see how he pitches. I hope he proves me wrong and goes 7 shutout innings. But I really like McLean.
I think that argument's pretty untenable, but teach its own. I think you gotta get at least 3 or 4 more starts to think that. But I do tend to agree with you, and it's kind of hyperbole. I do understand, but it's been 10 years since the Mets have had a young crop of talent in the pitching department come up like this. I mean, it's been a really long time. They've obviously relied on a bunch of signings. Whatever happened with Scherzer and Verlander, he brought in a bunch of other guys. Now Clay Holmes. I really want to discuss. You mentioned it before. It's someone that I also am very high on. He's on my fantasy baseball team. That's David Peterson. I don't want to say that he's the biggest surprise amongst all the Mets this year, but I think he is. And I'm hesitant to say that because last year he did have a 2.9 ERA. He was never like the number, like he was never like, we're trusting this guy. He's the one guy we are looking to put on the mound in the biggest game of the year. He only pitched 120 innings. He's already over that with now just over a month left in the season. Is that crazy to say? Is that like too far-fetched to say that he's been the biggest surprise in the Mets this year? And good surprise, not bad, but can I say that?
I've been looking at the rest of the roster, right? I think that Peterson has the most compelling case. Like, this is a guy who was a former first-round pick, so he had that first-round pedigree out of Oregon, and he came up during the COVID season and he showed flashes. But it was kind of the first part of his career. It was alternating. He alternated like pretty solid to average seasons with below average seasons. And then last year, when he came back in the middle of the year, he had even spent some time the year before in AAA because he couldn't really figure it out. He was great, but it's like, yeah, like you said, I mean, and granted, I just said, after 5 1/3 innings, I'm ready to, crown Nolan McLean. But Peterson, you had seen the volatility with him from a year-over-end basis. And coming into this year, right, he was kind of the guy that like nobody talked about. And
Yeah.
He's just gone out there. He's been a tremendous source of length. He's been, especially under the definition of the modern era of baseball, he's been an innings eater. He's been the best source of 6 innings plus that the Mets can get far and away. And yeah, it's he's not blowing hitters away. Last night he did have 10 strikeouts, but the Nationals have been pretty poor all year. He's working very well within the bounds of his arsenal. He forces a lot of ground balls, and that's typically a good thing when you have Lindor. Beatty's been a plus defender, McNeil at second. When you have those guys behind you, it's good to force a lot of ground balls. Still walks a few batters, but the ability to keep the ball on the ground keeps the pitch count low, lets him work deep into games. And yeah, he's been, I think definitely there's a case to say that he's been the most surprising in a good way player for the Mets this season.
Something that I think I heard this correctly from Gary during the Mets broadcast last night. I think he was the one on play-by-play. Yeah, he was. Peterson has been the only Mets starter to go into the 7th inning, or was it 8th? I think it was 7th, wasn't it?
He's the only starter. Yeah, I think it's possible.
I think it's the 7th because I was like, what? Wait, what? Like,
also,
if it was 8, I'd be like, but like, I think it's the 7th.
He's also the only Mets starting pitcher since June 7th, when Clay Holmes threw 6 innings against the Colorado Rockies to pitch 6 or more innings. We've gotten 5 2/3, but have not gotten 6 yet. So
it's unbelievable.
It's remarkable that it's been 10 weeks since June 7th.
I don't know. He's just been very even steady.
Yeah.
He's got under 3.3 ERA. He's no Tarek Skubal, but he's been extremely consistent. His control, for the most part, has been really solid. And as you said, he doesn't have blow away stuff with his fastball. His changeup has been really good. But I really like what I've seen from David Peterson. And I want to kind of get into the Mets bullpen here. The Mets, of course, acquired, you could say, 2 top-end relievers in Rogers and Helsley, and then by extension the third, which I'm going to get into because he's been very impressive. You know what I'm talking about, but that's my little tease for in a little while. But I wanted to discuss Ryan Helsley with you because we were talking about it at the time, that live stream we did right before the trade deadline. That was one of the top options that both of us were discussing for the Mets. Of course, they go out and trade for him. They put him in setup spots. They're doing the whole Hells Bells things. I thought that was a little over the top. That's just me. You probably agree with that now, but at the time you were all hyped about it. Every Mets fan was. He's not going to be getting that anytime soon. But Ryan Helsley, it blew up in multiple different games. He was doing his best Devin Williams impression. What do you see his role being throughout the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think Helsley is a great example, great crash course lesson on just the volatility of relief pitchers. We saw this with Edwin Diaz when he came to the Mets in 2019. Obviously, you just mentioned Devin Williams. Camilo Doval has had his moments for the Yankees too since coming over, where he hasn't looked the best. For Helsley, it's just we're talking really small sample of innings pitched, and there's been numerous games, right? I think when I watch him pitch, right, I see that he's got obviously all of the makings of an elite high leverage pitcher. He saved 49 games last year. He's touched 104 miles per hour with his fastball. At the end of the day, in the playoffs, you want guys who have velocity. You want guys who have experience. So I'm not too concerned in the long run, right? I think if the Mets are in a position to be in the playoffs, I have no qualms with throwing Helsley. Like, despite the struggles, maybe I would put.
I don't think you. I don't think you could put him in high leverage anytime soon. Like he had a good performance against the Brewers the other day. But I don't know. I just, dude, I don't see it happening anytime soon with a high leverage spot for him. I don't know. I do you really like when can you put him in that spot before Mets fans revolt and burn down Citi Field? Because I don't think you could do it anytime soon.
Well, I think in the grand pecking order of the bullpen right now, I would rather have obviously Diaz. Aside from Diaz, I would rather have Rogers out there. I'd rather have, depending on the matchups, I'd rather have Greg Soto out there. I'd rather have, but like that, honestly, for me, right, really the only two guys that I think I definitely want to have ahead of him are Rogers and Diaz. I think it's kind of like pick your poison with relief pitchers. Reed Garrett was phenomenal in the first half of this year. And then I was at the game last week when the Mets were up 6-0 against Atlanta and they ended up giving up 9 runs. Reed Garrett has given up like the most grand slams. These are all crazy stats that are kind of just like weird, like statistical anomalies. But
yeah.
Reed Garrett, bottom line is Reed Garrett has not been great in the second half. Ryan Stanek has not really been great for much of this season. But Stanek was a guy who had a 6.06 ERA in 17 appearances for the Mets last year. And then come playoff time, he was like the number 2 high leverage option. And he was great. I mean, this is the thing with relief pitchers, right? They can go through a 5-inning stretch where they give up 9 earned runs and blow 4 games and everyone hates them. And then they could have a 2-week stretch where they throw 10 scoreless innings. This is just the nature of relief pitchers. There's nothing that looks fundamentally wrong about Helsley. He doesn't look hurt. He's thrown some pitches that have been left out over the middle of the plate with his, some of his off-speed stuff, and the fastball is maybe a little flat. But at the end of the day, I kind of defer to his track record, and I think that the stuff plays in the playoffs, and you kind of just got to trust, right? If you just bury him in the 5th, 6th inning, that's not why they acquired him. That's not why they gave up the prospects for him. So you got to keep putting him in situations that are going to simulate when he'll be used when they need him the most.
Yeah, and I did mention that he pitched against the Brewers, actually, the Mariners. Don't ask. I get those two teams mixed up way too much. But I think that you're kind of seeing this now with Aaron Boone's usage of Devin Williams, who obviously I mentioned earlier. I think that they're 2 peas in a pod. You're starting to see more in low leverage, and I do think that there is a difference in the two of them, being that Helsley didn't really struggle earlier on in the season, but obviously Williams did. It's just been kind of like, all right, you trade to the Mets in New York, set up job, you're getting Hell's Bells, not in a closing spot. I still think that was really stupid to do off the bat. But, looking at that bullpen, and obviously you still can't trust Helsley. I think we disagree on where Carlos Mendoza needs to go going forward when it comes to Helsley. I think you just put him in low leverage and keep working him up. The Mets need to win games right now. I don't think you should risk it at all. But, to each its own. I think that when you look at the Mets bullpen, Gregory Soto has kind of emerged. Dude, can I say the number 2 option in the bullpen right now? Is that crazy? Is that too far-fetched?
Well, I think I'm comfortable to say that I'd prefer him to Brooks Raley as the number 1 left-handed option. But once again, Soto, this is just I like Greg Soto. He's got great stuff. He's got a nice sweeper. He throws hard. Like, these are great qualities to have. But when the Mets acquired him, everyone was like, "Oh, watch out! When it rains for Greg Soto, it pours." And so far, it's just been sunshine.
8 1/3. 8 1/3 innings.
Right.
0 earned runs.
But this is what I'll say. If Greg Soto comes in tonight and gives up 4 earned in 2/3 of an inning, all of a sudden he's got a 4 ERA. Like, this is just, and I hope that doesn't happen. And I hope Greg Soto runs a sub-1 ERA for the entirety of his Mets tenure. It'll be tremendous to the Mets. But these are just all like, statistical anomalies. Like Huascar Brazovan has been in AAA for the last month. He had a sub-2 ERA for the first 8 weeks of the season. This is just like kind of the nature of relief pitchers. But overall, the thing with Soto is like the stuff plays. He's got great stuff. He's got the stuff to strike anyone out. And being able to miss bats like in the playoffs is huge, because you come in a jam, you inherit a jam, runners on base. You don't need a soft ground ball. You need a strikeout. So that's why I probably prefer Soto to Brooks Raley, just because the stuff is better. But I do think they're both two good options. And keep in mind, this Mets team was running out like Brandon Waddell and Jose Castillo, like the Richard Lovelady, like the left-handed options for this team before a few weeks ago were really, really subpar.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at this point in time, you only could really trust consistently Edwin Diaz. Like, yeah, there are a few options elsewhere in that bullpen, but all of them up and down, as you said. People have said about Greg Soto is that, when it rains, it pours. And I'm not going to say to your credit yet, but I feel like, it's inevitable that he's going to blow up. Again, I knock on wood if it doesn't happen, but, the guy has 8 1/3 innings of 0 earned runs. At some point, he's going to allow a run or 2 runs or maybe 3. But I think
I trust Tyler
Rogers right now. Yeah, Rogers has also been solid. He's been really good for the Mets. But as of right now, is this true? Like, is this sentiment true that the one guy you trust, the other day, Edwin was trusted to get the 2-inning save, the 6-out save. Do you expect that to be the norm going forward now? Like, you got to get a win. You need a win. You're up 1 run in the 8th inning. Do you bring in Rogers? Do you bring in Soto? Do you try Helsley? Or do you go for a 6-out save with Edwin Diaz?
Depending if in the 8th inning, the harder their order's up, I want Diaz out there. I want Edwin Diaz on the mound. Look, if Edwin Diaz says I can get you 6 outs, I want him getting me 6 outs. Like I think that Diaz is on another. I think Edwin Diaz is truly in the elite of relief pitchers. When he is at the top of his game, he's, you don't want to say unhittable, but he's tough to hit. And he's got that dimension of strikeout stuff that only the few really elite relief pitchers possess. And yeah, of course I would love to have Diaz out there. When he was asked to get those 6 outs, this was a Carlos Mendoza, this was a Mets ball club that was desperate to get a win. McLean had done his job. It was, Seattle has tremendous pitching. We were lucky to scratch across 1 run against Wu, and then we were able to get a few insurance runs. Once we got those insurance runs, Mendoza was playing to manage. Like, that game was game 162, and they needed to win. And in a scenario like that, I'm giving the ball to Diaz 100%.
Yeah, and there's another discussion that we're going to have down the line, of course, with Edwin Diaz having an opt-out in this contract. Did sign the biggest contract ever for a reliever. It was 5 years, 102 million, I believe. Obviously the 3 years, you look at whatever, 64 or whatever the hell it is. So that's something that we're going to get into. I want to discuss that with you. Not the time. Plenty of games to be played for the Mets, hopefully into October, but of course we'll see. But as of right now, Edwin Diaz might be the most trusted player on the Mets roster. Is that crazy to say? Like, Soto, 880 OPS, like, he had 1,000 OPS last year. I'm like Edwin Diaz, most consistent Met, I believe, over the last 2 to 3 years. You could say Pete as well, but you guys didn't want to re-sign him at first last year, and I was like, you guys are idiots. But that's another story for another day. I think you have a comment here. You want to chime in here?
Yeah,
that conversation. You're like, oh, I don't really need Pete back, and I'm like, listen, that's going to be a disaster if you don't have that bat in the lineup. And he just broke the Mets home run record. And you wanted to let that go? He's the one homegrown position player the Mets. I mean, essentially, besides David Wright, who else in franchise history.
Look, I'm willing to accept defeat on the Pete Alonso take. I've admitted it to many people. It was a bad take. I was probably drinking the Kool-Aid too much with Mark Vientos, thinking you could just put him at first base. He played 2 games of first base this year, and he looked absolutely just out of place, like a fish out of water. So I think that's off the table. But my comment was going to be that I think Juan Soto has gotten to a point where his game is almost underrated. Like, we're scoffing at an 880 OPS. He has 20 stolen bases this year in 21 attempts. He's got 31 home runs. He's leading the league in walks. I think Juan Soto, he's struggled to hit in runners in scoring position, which is like a pretty sticky, pretty like, not say it's a pretty like random statistic that year over year there's kind of like there's no stickiness. There's nothing that's gonna like say, oh, he can't hit with runners in scoring position this year. That means that tomorrow night he's not gonna hit with runners in scoring position. Like, it's gonna come around for Soto in that department. I know he's clutch. He's done it before. He's had extremely clutch moments. He's done in the World Series. He's done in the ALCS. Like, I'm confident he'll do it again. But I think that Juan Soto is like, and granted, it comes with the territory. He left the Yankees, came to the Mets. He's got the biggest contract ever. But
I think based off that, you cannot say the guy's underrated if he's making that much money. You can't say that. You can't.
Right, but what I'm saying is that people are looking at an 880 OPS, 31 homers, 20 steals on August 20th with 40-plus games to play. I mean, this is – if Soto increases the power – we're talking about possibly 40 home runs, 25 stolen bases, leading the league in walks. Like, that's a pretty good season. That's a pretty good season.
I don't think anyone's denying that, especially with all the hoopla around the start of the season. Oh, did he make a mistake? Does he want to be a Yankee? I think that was all overblown. We discussed it at the time. Idiotic, completely contrived argument and discussion. And I'm glad we're off of that because it was garbage in my opinion. You still see, and as a Yankee fan, I still see a lot of yearning from Yankees fans now. Apparently now they're upset about Hal Steinbrenner not outbidding Steve Cohen when it was okay. Well, it was about the money, but there's just a lot, being said around that. Get over it. He's a Met, and good for you. Good for Mets fans out there. Juan Soto, extremely consistent player, and of course you sleep. I'm sure that you sleep well at night knowing that Juan Soto's in your team. The last guy I want to discuss, and then we're gonna hop off here, is Ronnie Mauricio. Someone who we did discuss a few weeks ago, you saying he hit that big home run against the Padres. I remember that night I was up till 1 a.m. watching that. I don't know why the hell I did that. They lost that game. But you look at Mauricio right now, has not been in the lineup, I believe, the last 3 games. If I'm correct, it seems like Mendoza now doesn't really trust him as much as he did maybe a month ago. What have you seen with Mauricio, and do you expect that to change anytime soon?
I think it's less of a trust thing and more of just searching for, out of the pool of young talent that the Mets have, kind of just searching for what the best formula is. And I think it's less of a knock on Mauricio and more of a credit to Brett Baty, who's been great in the month of August. He hit another home run last night. I mean, Baty, I was actually just talking about this with a friend earlier. Baty is pretty much shaping up where he's going to play about 115, 120 games, and he's going to hit like 18 home runs. He doesn't have the highest, I think he's hitting 240 with like 298, like a high, either low 300 or high 290 on base percentage. So he's not drawing a ton of walks, but he's got some slug in his bat, and he's playing an above average third base and second base. And I just think right now, the way that Brett Baty's been playing, the Mets would rather have him in the lineup. And Jeff McNeil too. Jeff McNeil has been playing good enough. He's got an 120 OPS plus. He had 3 hits the other night, including a home run. Like, McNeil, you can't take McNeil out of the lineup. So the last spot really comes down. You could DH Jeff, put Baty at second, and then put Ronnie at third, or vice versa, put Ronnie at second, keep Baty at third. But then that takes Vientos or Marte out of the lineup. So this is kind of what I was talking about before with the logjam.
Yeah.
I think it's less about Ronnie and more so it's just, it goes back to why a lot of people thought that it was logical for the Mets to trade one of these young guys at the deadline, because we're not even talking about Acuna, who's been in AAA. Like, there's just not really enough playing time to go around for all these guys. And I think when you're only one game up in the wild card and you've been scuffling, you're not really worried about like developing players. You're kind of just worried about putting the best lineup out there every night. And I think objectively, Brett Beatty at this moment in time gives the Mets the best chance to win when he's starting at third base.
Also Mauricio has not really done anything to help his cause. So I think that's made the decision a lot easier for Mendoza and Stearns, because I'm sure they both consult with each other on the lineups.
Yeah.
You understand how that goes with the Yankees, but that's a different story. All right, Gabe. Pleasure, as always, to have you on. You could check out Gabe's work at Metsmerized. Gabe is a blogger. He puts some great content out there, analytical genius, I'd like to say. So, Gabe, really appreciate this, man.
Thanks, Bryce. Thanks for having me on. One more thing I'll say about Mauricio while I'm on the attention. So that game, McLean's debut, when he was facing off against Wu, Mauricio was in the starting lineup. And something interesting that I noticed it during the game, but I saw a visual afterwards, is Wu just attacked Mauricio with like 7 or 8 four-seam fastballs, or fastballs at the top of the zone, like, a couple baseballs like higher than the strike zone. And Mauricio just swung at all of them. He couldn't adjust to it. So perhaps that's something that is factoring in the equation too. Maybe, Ronnie's like, he's always been a free swinger. He's got tremendous tools. But it's possibly an area, right? The lack of adjustment there was just something that I thought was interesting. So
I appreciate it. This is why you're a friend of the program, and I continue to have you on, because it's nuggets like that. So let me do this again. Gabe, thank you for joining me. And we're gonna keep this going. He's gonna stay consistent. He plays golf on Wednesdays, so every time he plays golf, he'll come back. He'll hop on. So stay tuned. Bi-weekly in 2 weeks. Maybe we'll ramp that up for the playoffs. Got to get some Mets talk in here. Yankees fans, avert your eyes. I like to talk about the Mets too. F off. All right, Gabe. Really appreciate this, man. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me, Bryce. Take care.
Peace.